Hello. So I have an update on the great hunt for Shrewsbury clock. If you've been following along, you know that I am trying to find what clock Falstaff was talking about when he referenced it in Henry. Oh, see, I was going to say that just perfectly. Let me get the reference right. Okay. Henry IV, Part 1, Act 5, Scene 4. Falstaff says, "A long hour by Shrewsbury clock." And my question was, what clock was Falstaff talking about? Obviously, for Shakespeare's audience, there was a clock that constituted Shrewsbury clock, or he wouldn't have written it like that. There's some reference there that is knowable, and I was trying to find it. So I reached out to Shropshire Council, who are in charge of the Old Market Hall and its maintenance, and I asked to be connected with their town historian. Well, she got back with me, and she says that the three clocks that I suggested to her were contenders as what Falstaff might have been talking about were the three options, basically. And she's not sure either, but here's what she said. She said that Shrewsbury Abbey is probably, it's either Shrewsbury Abbey or St. Mary's the Virgin that were the clock that Falstaff was talking about. Shrewsbury Abbey would make the most sense because it's the oldest, and when William Shakespeare was telling time, it was more common for people to tell the time of the day by the chiming of the bells at the local town church. For Shrewsbury, this would have been Shrewsbury Abbey. It had two sets of bells, and one of those sets was actually replaced in 1673. She was unable to find a mention of when the clock at Shrewsbury Abbey was installed. The clock that's there today was placed there in the 19th century. So it's unclear whether there would have been an actual, clock with the marking of the hours when Shakespeare was writing, but there were bells which would have marked the hour. Now, the other option is St. Mary's the Virgin. There was a medieval clock there at St. Mary's the Virgin, which would have been in place when Shakespeare was writing the lines for Henry VI, Part 1. But it was moved to Asterley Church and then donated to Shrewsbury Museum. And at that point, it was lost. And she says that this story of the clock is basically a legend. It's an anecdotal tale that this existed and this is what happened with it, and now it is gone. And she said that the sorting out the truth from the shaming of the lax collection management there, like they were trying to be mean to the poor Shrewsbury Museum there. I don't know if the meanness is warranted or not, if they were actually lax in their collections. I don't know. This is an anecdotal story she has shared with me here. But St. Mary's the Virgin had both a clock and chimes. So it kind of depends. Interestingly, she says that she thinks the Old Market Hall would not have been a place for Falstaff to tell the time, because the Old Market Hall that's there now was a late 19th century, 20th century insertion. Now, she doesn't elaborate on whether or not there was one that this, like, I know that the one that's there now replaced one that is much older. The older one was torn down and this one was put there in its place. So I know there is more history to Old Market Hall that could be explored. I also know that people in Shrewsbury on the general don't like Old Market Hall. There's apparently this great tension about the fact that it's there. Locally, for people in Shrewsbury, they think it's an eyesore and they wish it wasn't there and they don't like it and they don't want it to be important. So I can't tell from her response if this is the town sentiment of we're not going to discuss that one, it's irrelevant, or if it is actually that doesn't have a history worth exploring. But I do very much appreciate Emma Kate from the Collections and Curatorial Services at Shropshire Museums for getting back with me with this information. That's very lovely. So it seems that Shrewsbury Abbey or St. Mary's the Virgin were the most likely contenders. As far as me, I'm going to say he was probably talking about Shrewsbury Abbey. In terms of historical continuity, it's the one that has the mainstay. And I feel like the institution or the time telling device that has the most longevity is the most likely one to have been listed as a landmark, the way Falstaff says it in Henry VI Part 1. So we're going to call that the conclusion of our great hunt for Shrewsbury clock. And we're going to say we think it is Shrewsbury Abbey with St. Mary's the Virgin Abbey church there also being a close contender, but we're going to call it Shrewsbury Abbey. And I will link to some places where you can learn more about Shrewsbury Abbey below this video. But I wanted to share this with you guys and let you know that we have reached a conclusion in the hunt for Shrewsbury clock. And we should probably go back and investigate Old Market Hall at a later date and find out what the history for that is. But anyway, that's the clock. That's what I found out. I told you I would let you know. Thanks for watching. Bye.